La literatura norteamericana no puede imaginarse sin Toni Morrison, la gran escritora ganadora del Premio Nobel en 1993. Primera mujer en ganarlo desde hace 55 años y es la primera de ambos sexos, norteamericana, africana, que jamás lo haya recibido. Sus obras más importantes son The Bluest Eye, que puede traducirse como El ojo más azul, Song of Solomon, la canción de Salomón, Sula, Jazz, Tar Baby y Beloved, o Amada. Toni Morrison ha sido profesora de literatura en una multitud de universidades de los Estados Unidos y ha dado las conferencias Clark en Trinity College en Cambridge, Inglaterra, y las conferencias Massey en la Universidad de Harvard. Actualmente es profesora en Princeton, en donde tiene la cátedra George Gorhey. Toni Morrison es la ganadora del Premio Nobel 1993. Toni Morrison.
What did reading William Faulkner mean to you?
I was always impressed and deeply impressed by the whole the work that he did. He was one of the few people who was really talking about the South in this non-romantic way. You know, the South produces a kind of literature that is very self-reverential, constantly rationalizing and defending slavery and its way of life, constantly protecting and erasing and burying. Faulkner did something different. He not only looked at it very carefully, but recognized the complicated nature of that impasse. But he had the talent to execute it linguistically. He didn't just think it up. He was able to render it. And he rendered it in very convoluted sometimes, certainly very intricate, but powerfully moving language and images with these extraordinary characters. So, that was inescapable, his work.
Are many Black American women writing in the United States?
Oh yes, more than ever before, I think. I don't know how easy it is these days to get published, but some huge success stories. Terry McMillan publishes is extremely well purchased. Maya Angelou, Alice Walker, June Jordan, and Toni Cade Bambara, and Paul Marshall, and I'm leaving some important people out, but it's and some of the younger ones and newer ones I hear about, but have not had time yet to really read. But I'm under the impression, from just what goes on, that there are many, many more. Rita Dove is the...
You are a thinker and a stylist. Does style worry you?
Yeah, I want the language to be as well as say, so that it does what it says it says. So it has its own... it can hold... The language can hold, the structure can hold the content, so that I don't have to editorialize, so that it is really, truly push language all the way out to the edge of what it is capable of, and also to reflect the language of Black people. So you move up and down the scale, from vernacular to the sermonic, to the parables, to standard English, to lyric language, and back to the slang and the vernacular. That incredible mixture of levels was what I think I heard all the time in my house, and what made me love it, love language, and love what words were and could be, and also encouraged me to think about them very carefully and not use them not only improperly but wildly. You know, people can become glib, and I wanted very much for the language to do what the book is about. So that requires a certain kind of style, which I wouldn't have recognized until around the second book that I indeed had a style.
Language is different between black and white. Is writing different as well?
Well, I don't think it's different. I think there are groups that speak a different kind of English. I hear it less and less and less because television has made all of the language sound exactly the same. And you used to be able to go into neighborhoods all over this country, from Vermont to Texas to Florida to Wisconsin, and hear English spoken in these beautiful ways. I mean, you know, very unique and different words for different things, and less and less. And black speech has a lot of influences from other languages, and it's interesting because of how it has worked its way into everyday English. In America, there's almost nothing that has remained untouched by it. It used to be that what black people said and the way in which they said it was discredited because it was assumed it came from discredited people and uneducated people. Now, what black people say and how they say it is a mark of sophistication. To be hip, you have to really understand the language of black people, and you recognize it. Oh, I see it in journalism, in essays, in literary criticism, everywhere. And it's the language that comes from black culture, urban black culture. And it has become now not the mark of being discredited, but the mark of being urbane. So that words like okay, which are just general words that are real African words that come from real African languages, that everybody in the world knows what that means, except you'll never find its etymology properly described in a dictionary. It's always a little question mark there. And the same sort of things are applicable with more modern terms. You know, so it's interesting how the whole perception of what is valuable or what is valueless changes over time. So, you know, if you look at television, you hear it all the time. The most theatrical example, I suppose, and I'm not sure if it's true, in Mexico is rap music.
Rap, yes.
And, you know, it has one sort of original purpose for young black people, which is just to talk to one another. So if you live in Chicago, you can figure out what it's like to live in Detroit and what the dangers are. And that's really what it began as, a kind of underground message. Now it's a big, you know, commercial success and people come and go. But it's amazing to travel in Europe and hear French rap and German rap and English rap and so on.
But it travels.
It travels everywhere.
It travels very well.
Fast, as reggae does.
Yes.
And now reggae and rap has infiltrated all of the commercials. I mean, it's the music you hear underneath the girl on the beach and underneath the hamburger and where you're drinking all the major commercials use it. So it suggests, if they use it, warmth, authenticity, and modernity. It's hip, it's urbane, it's on the edge, it's recent. Now that was never the case 50 years ago. So you see what I'm saying, so that if I use the vernacular now, whereas if I used it before, it would have been quaint, like, interesting, regional, dialect, excuse me. Now if I fold it in, it has a contemporariness, even if I'm talking about things that happened in the 19th century. Because the language now has been distributed through the culture and through the music, which is the way it always traveled for us, was through the musicians were the ones who kept the language up. And if you were au courant, you always had to know what the musicians were saying, because they're the ones who traveled. Now, they're the ones who distribute it, but they're on television, you see, and radio, and in the record industry. And so you still get that constant movement and change in language, which is hopeless now for purists to try to prevent.
We don't want purists, do we?
Not me. Oh, no, not me.
Afro-Americans have contributed to the world in so many ways: dance, music, literature, art.
I think, by and large, there's an enormous amount of pride, but there's also bitterness because they never got the profit. You know, the music was always taken. I mean, I hear songs all the time by the Beatles, for example, the Rolling Stones, that were simply songs we sang as children that they arranged, and now they get the royalties from, the musical royalties. I hear, it's the art was given away freely in some instances, because maybe that's the way the artists were. You come from a culture in which people don't even sign their paintings, so what could it possibly be worth to do it any other way? But there is a great deal of bitterness, I know, because other people not only appreciated it, they made a lot of money off of it, you see. So that's hard for them.
What's the future of the Afro-American culture?
Well, it's endlessly inventive. You can't really, when I was watching young Spanish kids, black Spanish kids from Puerto Rico, Hispanic, I guess is the better word for that, breakdancing on the concrete, breaking their necks, whenever that was. It was amazing. And then doing robot dances. And then I was watching my own children do terrible things to my records, playing back the sound of the record on itself. And these things happen so quickly now that I cannot tell you. In 3 years, something absolutely astonishing will be going on that may just displace everything that I think is, the ultimate word now. There is something about a certain kind of really contained and constrained life that over time have made these people, my people, determined to rewrite the script that they have been given. And so it's like the music. It's always improvisational. It's always new. It's always different. But at the same time, it pays homage to the music that has gone on before.
Do you fuse black cultural nationalism and feminism?
Feminism, I think, is probably a little bit stronger than nationalism. I think perhaps my subjects have led people to think of the cultural nationalism, the sort of reverential notion of the culture as being quite, complex and superior and so on. But I'm bothered by the notion that it might not be understood in a global sense among black people. I'm very thrilled to know that in Senegal, Senegalese women read Song of Solomon a lot. And I go to great lengths to see to it that French publishers make my books available in Côte d'Ivoire and in Senegal. And with the Spanish publishers, it is very important to me that it's in Brazil. And it's in Portuguese in Portugal and published also in Brazil. Because I am thinking always of the diaspora and people in Martinique and in Minas Gerais and in, Dakar, always. But I have to be translated and have been translated and to the language of Europe in order to be distributed in what's left of the colonial empire. But I'm very, very conscious of that, not because because I think the kind of experience, the kind of language, the kind of perceptions about American blacks are of some interest, as well as enabling strategies for people elsewhere, just as for me, reading Kamara Lai, reading Achebe, reading Wole Soyinka, reading Ami Cesar, Senghor, were major educations for me.
Walcott.
Oh yes, Derek Walcott. I mean, it's extraordinary. There's a classic example, I think, of what happens when it isn't a question of transcending race. It's a question of being race and culture specific, but to have the tools to make it so applicable, because it is specific, to everything in the world. I mean, I think that's what's happened to all the great writers, have been able to do that, to write about Dublin in a way in which you feel like you're at home. And that would be my goal.
The white world has made very clear that black people are different. Do you feel different as a black person?
Yes and no. Obviously, there are more things about us that are alike than are different. But the difference that is there is a difference. It's a constructed difference. It's an imposed difference, a taught difference, but still there. And it's there over time. So that there is something called whiteness, which has nothing to do with skin. It has something to do about the way you think of yourself in the world. And it's irrelevant if you're not in the company of a black person. It's just irrelevant. In the same way that a black life is irrelevant if it's not in the company of a white person. In other words, they're mirror images feeding off one another. And it's the smallest thing in the world that separates human beings. On the other hand, because of the history of the West, it's the biggest thing. And you can associate yourself as a white person with the Western tradition. You can associate yourself with conquering other peoples. Even if you are, there's a little perk. You can be the poorest, most ill-educated white person in the world, but there is a social heft to it, a kind of a little tip that you can get by hanging on to it and never giving it up, because it pays off. It pays off in some way. Now, the question is, when does it pay off to be black? Well, in some instances it does. There's a little gift. So that people do hang on to these labels. And whether they feel different or not, they sometimes help maintain the difference. They help maintain it because it's comfortable, or it's habitual, or because they recognize the prejudices of the others. But we have to remember, these are all human inventions. I mean, black and white never meant anything, say in the 10th century. You didn't know what that was. You were a Moor, maybe, or, you came from a country. But nobody was worried about all that stuff.
What do prizes do to writers? Do they trap you, or can you still write?
What, prizes?
Yes.
I love prizes.
I know, but
they
my
don't do
question is,
anything.
do they trap you? Do they trap a writer? Can you write still?
If you let them, you can sort of get egocentric about the whole thing and forget, that the real problem is a piece of blank paper. That's always been the problem. What are you going to put on that piece of paper? And I think, for me at least, I've been lucky with the last events of this past fall, because I had something in mind to do and had been working on a project before. So I can't imagine, it would be horrible to think that something as lovely as that and as nice as that actually stopped you in your tracks. But many people have told me all sorts of horror stories about people who won the Nobel Prize who just sort of gave it up and were paralyzed by it. Now, I'm hoping that those people will also perhaps receive the prize when they were very old and perhaps were ready to stop anyway. But I just, I won't let that happen to me. It's much more important. As much as I appreciate the prize, the life for me is the writing life, not the prize life.
Slavery is one of your themes and obsessions.
Well, I knew people in my family who had been born as slaves, and they never talked about it, except in whispers and obliquely. But some stories surfaced. My grandfather, for example, was 5 years old when Emancipation Proclamation was declared. And he was a little boy, obviously, and he heard the grown-ups talking about emancipation is coming, emancipation is coming. But they didn't explain it to him, so he was terrified. He thought it was this huge monster that was coming to get him. So on the day, he hid under the bed. And they didn't know why he wasn't coming out all day. And then they had to explain it to him. He was an extraordinary man, though. Extraordinary.
But he didn't get to be a slave then. He was
not literally, no.
But he didn't. He had no memories at all, maybe from.
Well, it's not easily divided, The difference between the date of the end of slavery and the change in one's life is not that clear. It's not that everybody sort of goes off to the seashore and lives happily ever after. The fact of slavery may have been illegal, but the practice of enslavement went on for a long time. Those people had to leave in the middle of the night from Alabama in order to literally leave the South. My grandfather lived till he was in his 90s. Extraordinary man who had never been to school except one day to tell the teacher he couldn't come back. And he had to work. But he read. His older sister taught him. And I remember, for me, the classic thing that the family was very proud of was that he had read the Bible through 3 times. And I remember him, even as I'm talking to you now, sitting there reading black newspapers and every day, and reading books constantly. This is a man with 1 day of education and who died with all of his teeth.
That's
which
really
I find
luck.
extraordinary.
That's really luck.
It's extraordinary.
But he learned how to read anyway.
Yes, his sister was able to go. Well, they had school until the 6th grade or something, and he learned from her and was a reader all his life. For black people, reading was a way out. It was true liberation. And my mother's grandmother I knew, who was also born a slave, and I knew her when I was a little girl. She was very, very old and lived in Michigan. And I remember when she used to come into the room, all the men stood up. And she couldn't read either. But people came to her from all over the state for advice and her wisdom. They were rather extraordinary.
That's an extraordinary story of your family.
Yeah, I had a great deal of respect for them and love for them, but knowing the kinds of lives that they must have had always made me feel that I probably shouldn't complain too much about anything. And that kind of history was palpable to me because I knew that whatever they experienced, it was life-threatening. And they survived it, triumphed over it, and they were powerful figures in my life and in my imagination.
So being guilty, it's a characteristic that accompanies some people with your past.
Not for me.
Not for you.
No, they gave me too much. It's as though they said, I think James Baldwin said it once, we have already bought the crown, so wear it. Those people already suffered. They already survived. They already taught us. They bought the crown, so wear it.
So, Toni, when are you coming to Mexico?
January 1995.
We'll be waiting for you there, and thank you very much.
En Princeton, Silvia Lemus.